Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction, Megan, and thank you, Megan and Jen, for having me here and inviting me to speak and share the next 90 minutes together. I just saw my full face big on my computer, so I'm going to change that. I don't need to see that much of my face. Hello, Tanche. Welcome, everyone. As Megan said, my name is Vanessa Lesperance, and I am a mixed heritage woman. I'm just going to share my screen before I do my intro. And let's go. Right, folks, there's slide. And where do I slideshow? There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so welcome everyone to the session on relational leadership, RRU Alumni Chat. Megan, thank you for doing the beautiful land acknowledgement. Before I introduce myself, I will also share that I'm joining all of you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of Kakite First Nation, also known as New Westminster. And in case folks don't know, Kakite means resting place. And so I'm fortunate to also live on these lands. I'm working here today, but I also live here, and Kakite means resting place. So I hope the next 90 minutes together, it's a time for you to rest, reflect, and think about you and your own leadership and how to be mindful about the leader you want to be this year and going forward, and together that we can co-create and learn together in this space. So I'm really excited to be here. In case folks don't know, I shared a link. So in case you don't know the traditional ancestral land that you're on, there's a great resource called Native-Land. I'm going to put it in the Zoom chat. I just put it there again. So in case folks don't know, if you're curious, the traditional land that you're on, this is a great resource for folks. Okay. So about me, before we begin. So who is Vanessa? Well, I am a mixed heritage woman. I am European settler on my dad's side, proud Métis woman on my mom's side. As Megan mentioned, I am an alum, so I graduated from a Master's of Arts in Leadership in 2020, and it was a profound experience. And I think it's just so fitting that Royal Roads has invited me in to talk about relational leadership, because my experience from Royal Roads was truly rooted in relational ways of being. And so we will explore that more, but I think Royal Roads is a beautiful example of how we can be relational in school and in academia. Today we're going to be talking about leadership, but really being relational can go into all realms of our lives. And I think Royal Roads is a great example of that. So I graduated from the Master's of Arts in Leadership in 2020, and now a lot of my work is with Indigenous entrepreneurs. So I do work with the Lift Circle. So we co-create the conditions for Indigenous women entrepreneurs to thrive. And we create programs in support of, and we also do a lot of advocacy with federal ministers for improvements for federal procurement. Working in this space is a passion of mine. I've also worked with a lot of Indigenous youth in creating pop-up businesses. I also hold Indigenous Enough circles. So it's a space for Indigenous folks who are reclaiming who they are as an Indigenous person to be heard, seen, and validated. I started to offer these circles for free on a monthly basis, and it started to catch on, and universities started to invite me in to hold these circles for their Indigenous learners. High schools and even private companies like Google have invited me in to hold these circles, to hold space, because the concept of not feeling Indigenous enough is so prevalent in North America. And I'm also the founder of Vancity Labyrinth, where I offer labyrinth workshops for events, workplaces, and schools. And it's, for me, it's a form of decolonizing business, because that was the focus of my master's degree. I was examining what might happen if we decolonize business through workplace spirituality, and people are invited to bring their whole selves to work, mind, body, emotion, and spirit, which goes hand in hand with relational leadership. And so we will get to that right away. And before we do, I would love to hear from all of you folks. We're going to do a bit of a check-in. So I would love to hear, I know we all have busy lives, busy mornings. I'm literally at the Justice Institute right now, teaching a course on power and privilege. I just stepped out of my class and now I'm here. And so it's kind of been a hectic morning for me. So my invitation for you and for all of us just to get settled in for our time together is in the chat. Share what number or numbers best represent you right now in this moment. I would say I'm definitely like a combination of like 2 and 4 right now, or maybe 2 and 5, actually more so. So I'd love to hear where folks are doing, how you're feeling right now. There's no right or wrong, but just use the chat and indicate which number or numbers you're feeling like right now. I'm seeing some 4s, some 6s, 4 and 6, 2, 4, 3 and 6. All right. Great. Thank you, everyone. I think it's just a fun way to check in and just gauge where folks are at, and for you to check in with yourself too, and just see where you're at right now. Okay, so moving on. What is relational leadership and why is it needed? If folks want to share in the chat, because I know there's lots of experience and wisdom in the room right now, especially for folks who, done the leadership program at Rural Roads. I don't claim to be an authority or know everything. I'm just going to share, from my experiences, my learnings and my understanding, but I would love to hear from folks. If you want to share in the chat, for you, what is relational leadership? Why is it needed? And maybe you have no idea, and that's totally okay too. But would love if folks just shared in the chat, what's your understanding of what relational leadership is? Or maybe you have no idea. And like I said, that's totally okay too. Layla says, lead with empathy, show up with authenticity, vulnerability, holistic, inclusive, values-based trust, meeting people where they are, collaborative leadership, compassion, recognizing, acknowledging we're human. I want to learn what it means. Beautiful. So it sounds like, a lot of folks have a pretty sound and solid understanding of this. So if this is new for you, this is great. And so hopefully maybe you walk away today learning something new. And for folks who are like pretty familiar with this, hopefully it's just a nice refresh and just really validate, where you're at in your own leadership, and hopefully encourage you to keep going in the right direction. Or maybe this might give you different insights and different perspectives. But either way, I hope there's value for everyone here. So how I describe it is, in essence, relational leadership is about connecting to something bigger than oneself. It's not just about, driving profit, which is needed in business, or if you're not for profit, getting funding. That's great, but it's also empty and a bit hollow. So it's relational leadership it's values driven. Folks were mentioning values in the chat. It's values driven. And then it's building a bridge to connect your people to the vision, to bring them along. It's heart-centered and it is people-centered. And for me, that's how I like to describe what relational leadership is. It's having a big vision. Well, how do you see the world? What's the world that you want to create? What's the world that you want to be in? Tapping into your values, and then building a bridge to bring them along, to connect them to that vision, and always remaining heart-centered and people-centered. So to me, it's always important to offer context, because we don't live, work, or operate in silos, right? And for me, it's always important to understand and have context where we came from and how did we end up where we are. And that's why I'm going to share what I'm going to share. So we're just going to do a brief look at the past in terms of leadership styles and what was considered leading edge or at the forefront. And chances are we might see some remnants of that today. So offering context for relational leadership. So again, where we've been and where are we going? So it doesn't really start, but one scientific management that really still has impact today is Taylorism or scientific management. Show of hands or just emojis. Has anyone heard of this concept before, Taylorism or scientific management? You can use emojis, thumbs up. Okay, a few thumbs up. Okay, cool. So let's unpack it together. Oops. So Taylorism was developed in 1911 by Frederick W. Taylor. And the goal was to design organizations for max efficiency, which in of itself sounds great, right? One of the key defining moments of Taylorism or scientific management is constructing what Frederick W. Taylor did was constructed it so each moment and every movement of all workers were highly controlled. And this is what allowed for the max efficiency in organizations. Nowadays, we would call that micromanaging. And we also still see this. I come from, when I worked in the corporate, I came from a call center environment, and we still see this now where people's time is still measured to literally the second, right? So the impacts of this are still felt today. Around the same time, Max Weber created bureaucratic management. And it's a relationship between in this theory, Max Weber says relationship between managers and employees must be impersonal. So there has to be separation, arm's length. It was purely professional. We're here to talk about work, nothing else. That's part of bureaucratic management. There's a clear and defined hierarchy between roles, and rules must be followed without exception. So for these two, this is how we obtained maximum efficiency in the workplace. Now, there's definitely advantages to this, right? Because it provides structure to people, and we need structure to do our work well. Roles were clearly defined, which is also really helpful to know, okay, what I'm going to do. So there's no guesswork. So those were the advantages of these theories and of these management styles. However, on the flip side, they're highly and deeply colonial. It takes the person out of the work and treats people like machines and robots. And as I mentioned, the focus of my master's degree was on decolonizing business through workplace spirituality. And it's because of Taylorism and bureaucratic management is the reason why employees, team members, historically speaking, and even now, it's starting to change now, but where we're invited to bring our mind and body to work. That's it. And we have to cut ourselves off emotionally and spiritually. So again, treating us like we're more like robots or machines rather than human beings. So it creates this sense of, okay, I need to suppress who I am, and you can't bring your whole self to work. And I think someone mentioned that in the chat, talking about your being focused on holistic being in the workplace is a key marker of relational leadership. Would love to hear from folks in the chat. Where or how, or if you still see these types of management styles now. So please feel free to share in the chat. Volker says, that's why I do not like the name human resources. They're humans and not resources like machines. Definitely, yeah. Treating people as though, and I hate assets. People are our most valuable assets. We're human beings. You know what I mean? A computer is an asset. You know, a car is an asset. Treat humans as humans. Yeah, human capital. Okay, yeah, it sounds like people are seeing some remnants of this now. And so that's why it's important to look at our past, because, you know, our past, whether we like it or not, influences our present day, no matter how far it was. And so why is a shift needed? Why is a change needed? Well, it's partly because we have to, because we're not well. It's impacting our well-being to be treated like robots, to be treated like machines, and to be work. So I'm going to share this stat with you. And this is taken from a really great book. I highly recommend. It's called Healing Organizations, Awakening the Conscience of Business to Help Save the World by Raj Sisodia and Michael J. Gelb. I know Raj Sisodia. I don't know about Gelb, but Raj Sisodia is a scholar in the US, works at an Ivy League university, and does a lot of organizational behavior work. And in the book, they say, today, white-collar work has become far more hazardous to our well-being than blue-collar work used to be. Stress-related conditions account for more than 75% of visits to doctors' offices. Can you imagine? Stress-related conditions account for more than 75% of visits to doctors' offices. That's huge. And work pressures are by the far greatest stressor in contemporary life. Who agrees with that? Show of hands. Yeah, right on. They go on to say, stressful workplace environments are responsible for at least 120,000 excess employee deaths each year in the US alone, and 180 billion of additional healthcare expenditures. This is not sustainable. Work is literally killing folks and impacting our well-being. I also want to introduce the term karoshi to folks. In case you don't know, karoshi is a Japanese word, and it was coined in the 70s, I believe, either 1970s or 1980s in Japan. And karoshi literally translates to death from overwork. Because in Japan during that time, imagine that was the 70s. This was before even Google was a thing, right? Before we all had our smartphones. But back then they were noticing many people, young people in their 20s and 30s and 40s, suffering from heart attacks and strokes due to work-related stressors, including suicides. So again, the current state is just not sustainable for employees and for team members. There has to be a different way to do business that accounts for our well-being, for our holistic selves. And this is where relational leadership comes into play. And the first bullet I have here is that relational leadership is rooted in Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And I mentioned this, I feel it's important to mention this because throughout history and even current day, Indigenous knowledge systems and Indigenous ways of knowing and being have always been marginalized and kept at the margins. And yet relational ways of being is part of Indigenous worldview. And yet, sadly, there isn't as many articles, books about Indigenous or relational leadership by Indigenous scholars and by Indigenous thought leaders as there are by other people. So of course, the concept of relational leadership isn't credited to Indigenous folks. It's credited to people with the bigger platforms or who have other opportunities. But relational leadership is truly a decolonized form of leadership because it accounts for the whole person. And so, and it's important to give credit where credit is due, because again, like I said, historically, Indigenous folks and knowledge systems have either been made illegal or marginalized. And so it's now is the time to give, like I said, credit where credit is due and acknowledge the contributions Indigenous peoples have in our ways of knowing and being to society. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts with all my being that Indigenous ways of knowing and being can really help to shift our society to be well and to account for our whole well-being and our well-being for Mother Earth and our planet too. So again, this is why, sorry, I'm going off about this, but something that I'm passionate about. So again, relational leadership, even though you might not find too many academic articles or books about this, it truly is rooted in Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Okay, and so what are some other hallmarks of relational leadership? Well, it includes being inclusive. So ensures peoples have a voice and feel heard and seen. It's rooted in purpose. So a relational leader has a clear view of their purpose or vision and ensures to share that vision with others. Relational leaders are highly ethical and exhibit highly moral behavior. And it's empowering. Relational leaders have a concern for growth and development of their team. And also team process. So ensures folks are clear on their role and how to be successful. So if we see this relational leadership compared to the bureaucratic style of management or Taylorism or scientific management, we see it's almost like a night and day difference. One is really focused on results, quantifiable figures, outputs, right? And a value of who you are as a worker. Whereas relational leadership is rooted in relationships. It's people first. It's making sure that folks are included, people have a voice. And I don't know about you folks on the call today, but you know, being heard and seen and respected feels a lot better than just be seen as an employee and my value purely based on what I can produce. So I also like to say it's about finding balance. And in the book, Healing Organizations that I mentioned, Raj Sisodia and the co-author talk a lot about balance and how balance in our modern Western world, there's a lack of balance. And that's largely because, you know, historically, work has been dominated by white males only. So in that essence alone, there's a lack of balance. There's also been a lack of balance because, again, historically, the sole focus for the most part has always been purely on profit. So we don't care about the planet, we don't care about people, we're here to make money and that's it. So relational leadership is also about balance. And again, tying it back to Indigenous ways of knowing and being. That's why I like to use this medicine wheel. I'm sure folks have heard the concept, the quadruple bottom line, right? So historically, focus the bottom line has just been purely on profit. But now we're starting to see we need to actually find more balance. And again, rooted in Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And that's why the medicine wheel is a perfect construct. Because in Indigenous epistemologies, we use the medicine wheel to show for total well-being, we need to find balance. And so in a business context, that looks like finding balance between people, making sure your people are taken care of, being mindful of the planet, of course, making profit because the business has to make profit, a not-for-profit needs funds to operate, right? And then purpose. What's your why? What's your bigger vision? What's the change you want to make, you want to see in the world? I'm a firm believer that businesses and entrepreneurs are in a really special position to drive change in society, even more so than governments. We know government moves as fast as molasses, right? But it's in the business world, it's entrepreneurs, they make changes, they influence society at a pace way faster than the government. So if we look to business leaders and entrepreneurs to drive this change, we can really start to shift society. And so finding balance, not only in the quadruple bottom line, but also finding balance, on the personal level, allowing people to bring their whole selves to work, mind, body, emotion, and spirit. Again, I'm teaching today, and it's heavy content. We're talking about power and privilege, and some folks were really vulnerable and really opened up and shared about what's going on for them, and there were tears from quite a few learners. That's not too common in post-secondary institutions. I'll say, railroads is an exception for that. I definitely cried quite a bit during residency.
Yeah, so did I.
See, I'm not alone. But giving space for people just to be people in workplace or in school is so important to find that balance for maximum well-being. And so again, that's part of the role of a relational leader, is to allow and create space for that.
Vanessa, I'm just going to draw your attention to the chat. There's a great question here from Rick Clark. He says, can you give some examples of purpose that's separate from people, planet, and profit?
Yeah, so purpose would be like, what's your bigger why? So if, for example, someone starts a business, well, you're going to start a business because you're going to make money. That's great, but that's not going to inspire you. So, if we go deeper than the making money part, what's the change you want to make with your business? What's the change you want to see in your industry? What kind of impacts do you want to have on society? So for me, with Vancity Labyrinth, I have the labyrinths to really, enhance holistic well-being in the workplace, because I see the stress and the overwhelm and the anxiety in the work, and it's debilitating and it's not sustainable. So for me, I want to influence that change, and also to decolonize business too. So that's my purpose. That's my reason. That's my why. And I would love for others to share in their chat what's your purpose and the role you do in your job. What do you connect to that really helps to motivate you and keep you connected in the work you're doing, whatever it is. I would love for others to share, just to enhance our own everyone's collective learning. Moving on. And we're going to go into breakout rooms soon, so don't worry. I'm not going to be like chattering at you this whole time. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, or we're going to have some activity here. So that's coming pretty soon. Before I do, I think it's important to talk about love, especially in the context of relational leadership. We can see that, like, with Taylorism and bureaucratic management styles, love was not a thing. There's no room for love in business, right? And I think it's important to shift that. To me, it's funny that, saying love was almost like a taboo thing in business or in work, but it doesn't have to be. And I love this quote by Nand Kishore Chaudhry. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's the owner and founder of Jaipur Rugs. Amazing story. It's a social enterprise that he started in India with a very meager start, very meager beginnings. And he employs the untouchables in India, provides them living wage salary jobs to produce these rugs. He was one of the first people to do this and to create equity in a caste system that's pretty rigid and unforgiving for folks at the lower rung of the caste system. So he employs these women, these untouchables. They co-create community together. He provides a living wage, and the people he employs truly feel taken care of. Because of this approach, and because he leads with love, he's now one of the top manufacturers in India with this innovative style that's rooted in relational leadership. And he says in this quote, leaders driven by love will bring sustainability and healing to the business as well as themselves. Also, I want to talk about she would probably hate this if she knew I was doing this, but this is my mentor, Tara Fraser. I feel fortunate and privileged to call her a mentor and to know her. She's an incredible Métis leader. She actually also teaches at Royal Roads University, but she's the founder of Esqueo Air. Esqueo Air is the first airline in Canada to be wholly owned and operated by an Indigenous woman. And folks probably know, the airline industry, the aerospace industry, very white male dominated, right? So not many women, especially not too many BIPOC. So Black, Indigenous women of color. And so here, Tara is, you imagine, like, talk about just like disrupting and dismantling. Not only is she an Indigenous woman, but she also makes a point to wear this love button to bring love into this industry. Because really belongs everywhere. Because I know some folks, and he says, and Martin Luther King says, power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice is love. The two go hand in hand. Power and love are used together to create that balance that's missing. It's power with, rather than coercive power over, inclusive, and starting to create more just and equitable systems for folks who have been historically excluded and marginalized. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Okay. So
I think we might have had a bit of a technical. Did everybody get booted and come back? I think it seemed like everyone seemed to disappear for a moment there.
Oh, I still see folks on my screen.
Okay. All is well?
Good. Yeah, okay. All is well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go back to driving our presentation. Share screen. Actually, before I do, because when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see folks. How's everyone doing so far? Please get a thumbs up. People with me, we're doing good. We're hanging in there. Perfect. Okay, beauty. Okay, so before we go into breakout rooms, I'm just going to share a personal story of me being on the receiving end of relational leadership, and just the huge impact it's had with me. And this happened 8 years ago, and it's still so present with me. And relational leadership is and can be truly transformational. But as mentioned, I used to work in a call center environment a million years ago, and as during years ago, so I used to work at TELUS, and as over time, I got into higher positions at TELUS, and I had this one boss who was amazing. He was just so easy to talk to. He was personable. He was funny. He made sure that, the team came together and we would get stuff done, but also just making sure we had time just to connect as humans. We would joke around. And, there was times where he would really go to bat for me, either with other departments or with more senior leaders. And I felt so supported by him. But I didn't feel as supported until I had found out that my mom was terminally ill. And I'm on the mainland. My mom lived on the island. And so I knew my mom was terminally ill, and she was given 1 year. That was her timeline. And so my mom was doing really good until like the last 3 or 4 months, and she really took a turn in her health. And I felt so guilty living on the mainland. I would go frequently to go visit her, but being here was just it was just too hard and too difficult. And my job required me to be here in the city. So I talked to my boss. His name is Scott, and he allowed me to relocate. He actually created a brand new position for me, which enabled me to work remotely, enabled me to work anywhere. Remember, this is pre-pandemic, so working from home wasn't as much of a thing. So this position allowed me to relocate, work from Victoria, which was huge. He would check in on me, send texts, see how I was doing. But just doing that for me was just huge. After my mom passed, he didn't worry about how long it took me to come back to work. He was like, you take the time you need. There was absolutely no rush. And then when I came back to work, I found out, it makes me emotional, but I found out that him and my team had fundraised a whole bunch of money to donate in my name to cancer research. And so it's this type of relational leadership that, I always had a great relationship with Scott before this, but afterwards, like, I would have moved mountains. I would have worked, like 18-hour days, and not because I felt forced to, or because I had to, or because I felt obligated. It's just because he went to bat so much for me. I felt I wanted to do the same for him. And it just really, it changes a whole work culture and a whole dynamic. And to me, it just really makes it such a fulfilling and enriching place to work that people want to be. And to me, that's one of the best outcomes of relational leadership. Yeah, there's tangible outputs, like there's increased customer service and ROIs, but if we connect to our humanity first, that will then have trickle-down effects to all other areas within a business. So that's my story. But I would love for folks to talk about your own stories with relational leadership. So you're going to go into breakout rooms, and would love for folks just to share a personal story or example about relational leadership experience and the impact it had on either yourself or another person, a team, or a group. So again, we're going to go into breakout groups and just talk about, a personal example of relational leadership. And we'll have 15 minutes in your breakout group. So make sure everyone has a chance to share. And I think Megan and Jen are going to help me.
Yeah, we're going to get you all, everyone set up for breakout rooms right now.
Perfect.
And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
Generates for other people. So I think I've really noticed partly a transition over the years, and partly it was a style thing. And then I joined the Ministry of Children and Families about 5 years ago. And then I've moved on to another ministry now, but certainly they were really consciously trying to introduce the idea of relational leadership and showing up as your whole person, not just as your work self.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that when I've done the relational leadership, you're more vulnerable, and then you're more able to be hurt, which was part of the experience for me, because normally shields up to a certain extent so you can continue through, but when you let them down, it works both ways.
Like when you open window of the car when you're driving along, you start to get some breeze.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which you can't always control.
Yeah.
I have a couple of reflections, and thanks for that, Teresa. I was thinking, I'm really drawn to the topic of relational leadership, and that's why I was interested in signing up when I saw the email from alumni. So thanks for that, Megan. And I think what resonated for me on the presenter, I forget her name, the presenter was, she started off describing relational leadership rooted in Indigenous ways of knowing. And so I'm Indigenous. I was born and raised in Bella Bella. I'm Healtsick First Nation. I do not live in my community anymore, but I served as a program manager in the local hospital for Vancouver Coastal years ago. And I felt that was the most pivotal part of my relational leadership, where I was growing and stretching, and working in a very small community where I pretty much knew most people and families, but also when they encountered their healthcare in that tiny hospital, it was always in a time of trauma or some significant medical event. And I found that I really leaned into this relational leadership to support my staff and to really, the parts that resonated for me was around the inclusiveness and the purpose and sharing your vision and speaking your vision, but also allowing people to have voice and to be heard. That really resonates with me as well. I think now that we're on this side of the pandemic as well, I've been really paying attention to the impact of COVID on all of us and systems and healthcare. And what I'm noticing now is the importance of offering psychological safety in the workplace. And so those sort of my reflections. Finding balance, I think it's important. I'm still working on that part myself. So
yeah.
Hello. I think a lot of people these days are kind of aware, like if you want someone to do something, you're better off to have them want to do it for you rather than just paying them to do it. And I guess another thing that I'd like to hopefully pick up from this seminar is how to also, like, it's more about just not having other willing participants. So I've got a few guys that I train from time to time and I oversee them, and I need to actually hire a supervisor to take over that job. But, I ask, like, when I see them in person, I talk to them about their life and stuff. And I ask them, like, hey, is there anything you need to make your job better, easier, any sort of feedback, like basically to try to keep them there. And they're often just like, no, and they're still looking for another job. So it's like, I don't know how to necessarily get them to join in that dialogue as well. And then also working with other contractors. Yeah, sometimes it can be quite matter of fact that, like, hey, this has got to be done on this date. And, I'm always very open to, like, hey, I understand that everyone's got family, things come up, but, how to inspire them to want to do the things and feel like, that it's not just a job, it's a relationship, and if they keep letting me down, it's not so much that they're losing money, it's that they're disappointing me and making me work more.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just waiting for some folks. We're still in their breakout rooms, which means the conversation's going really good. They don't want to come back.
Loving the work. This is excellent.
Hi, Heather. You're the
Yeah.
best.
I'm taking lots of notes and I'm learning some great things.
Coming from the relational leader herself, that means a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome back, folks. Okay, it looks like, wow, we're coming in fast and furious. Welcome back. I hope you had some rich conversation, rich dialogue in your short breakout room. I hope no one was pulled out mid-sentence. I know that happens all the time. I'm curious to hear, I would love to hear from just one or two folks, what came up for you? Anything stand out to you in your discussion? Before I do, I was just chatting with someone else, and I think, it's really important to acknowledge, that some folks, and myself included too, have thought, oh, I'm not leadership material because I'm too soft, right? And to be a leader, you need to be a certain way, and maybe like loud, assertive, boisterous, you know what I mean? And so I'm wondering if others feel that way too, or I've thought that at some point of like, oh, I'm too soft, I'm too quiet, I'm too soft spoken to be a leader. And so so I'm just curious if that also resonates or lands with folks. And then the conversation we were having, we looked at Dr. Bonnie Henry. If folks live in BC, you're probably familiar with her. We saw her on TV all the time, but she was the head medical officer, doctor, leading us through the pandemic, and an incredible leader, smart, full of purpose, but not loud, right? Like not overbearing. And to me, that's a great example of a relational leader. Same with even Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Again, not loud, not overbearing, but very, relational in her approach. So, just some examples in case, folks are have maybe a certain picture and image of what a leader is, or, a stereotype, and just to know that that's not the case. And there is room for relational leadership. And it's actually really needed to start to heal organizations and heal the business world. With that said, I asked, for folks to share, what was said in your small breakout rooms. And Judith, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you so much. There was something you said about how, okay, I've lost my train of thought. So I'm just going to go straight to, I was going to use that to segue into what came out of our conversation. So in our conversation, one thing was very clear, which is that relational leadership is like a gift that keeps giving. When you've experienced it, it leaves a mark in you so deep that you just become a relational leader yourself when you have those opportunities. And so we begin to, what I was going to say was, somewhere during the time you were talking, you talked about how it is the business people that can bring the shift that we want in how we relate with each other in work, our culture, work culture. Not waiting for government to put a law down. It's in those little spaces. So when you look at it as a gift that keeps giving, then you see how it is about the individual interaction that we each have. And so the impact is that we begin to spread that feeling that we had by becoming relational leaders ourselves. So that was something that we discovered as we shared our stories.
Beautiful insights and observations, Judith. Thank you for sharing. And how truly transformational it can be, right? If you're on a team with a relational leader, how far that can help you progress, like just personally and professionally, and just to really be seen and heard as an individual and be appreciated. Yeah, so thank you. Anyone else care to share? I'm scanning for hands. And I see Glenna, your hand's up.
Thank you. One of the things that came forward in our group is understanding boundaries, and we have society that's very colonized, and some people don't want to share. And then we further discuss the importance of trust, because and then the conflict between having to lead, but my also having to discipline, and so how do you discipline employees and in your leadership role engage in that process, as well as try and build those relationships. And then so we further discuss then how discipline can work out with that, and that you're setting people up for success and not failure. And so those are just part of some of our discussions.
Love it. Yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing that, Glenna. Anyone else before we move on? I know there's lots of wisdom in the Zoom room, lots of experience.
Eric here, I'll just say one thing. I posted a piece about Susan Cain's book, Quiet, but it's just, I think it's a sort of, I look at this as a kind of a personal leadership thing where, this is what I said in our small group, but if I'm at a conference and there are 50 people there for 3 days, I arrive and there are people who I'm naturally attracted to, the cool people, the smart people, the famous people, whoever they are. Okay. But I've sort of trained myself over the years to find out, and this I think is sort of personal leadership, find out who in the room is invisible to me and make a point of engaging them, because we all have our own biases around who we are attracted to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if I can correct and say, hold on a second, what about that person over there? They haven't said a thing for 2.5 days, and I'm sure that they're here. I know that they have something to say. And so it's approaching, engaging, and finding those nuggets of wisdom, which without that sort of bit of a self-correction thing, okay, who's there for me to talk to? Who do I have something to share with, and what can they share with me? I find that's very effective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to me, there's such a strong tie-in to exactly what you said. Arfin, is that how I say your name? Arfin.
Arfin, yeah.
Arfin. So thanks for correcting me, Arfin. Huge connection between relational leadership and working towards a more just and equitable society, and really moving through I think social justice, ensuring, like you said, the folks who've been historically excluded and marginalized have a voice, have a place, and to know that they're set up for success. Yeah. So if any folks here or do EDI work or JEDI work, to me, like relational leadership goes hand in hand with it, because it goes to the inclusion part, and ensuring your folks, your people, all your people are set up for success. And if there's extra barriers that folks are facing, how do we make it more equitable so everyone can thrive in your work environment? So, and I think that really goes back to relational leadership, building those relationships with your people, finding out what you need, and then ensuring folks feel empowered for success. And, and obviously that's going to be different for each person. And that's why, that relationship building is so important.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And for example, when you're chairing a meeting, identify who are the quiet people here. We need to hear from them. We exclude them at our peril. And so gently, as the leader, as a facilitator, find them, draw them out, and bring to the table what they have for us. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. we're going to move on just for the interest of time. So I'm just going to share some ideas, and none of this is like, game changing, like life changing, just really simple ideas, really easy ideas to implement, some easier than others, but easy ideas to implement, and just think about, okay, how to be build more relational leadership into your own leadership. And something that I realized something I don't have in this talk, in this presentation, are, what are the benefits, the outcomes of relational leadership? And I know folks in this room probably have really great ideas. So I'm just going to offer in the Zoom chat, if folks just want to share, what are the benefits? Like, why even become a relational leadership? What are the benefits to your teams, your organization, to society? So we'd love to hear what folks have to say, so we don't overlook what the benefits are, because there's so many really rich and important benefits for relational leadership. So if folks want to share your thoughts and ideas in the Zoom chat, please do. Okay, no, we don't want you. Oh, we don't want you either. We want you. Okay, so as mentioned, we're going to be talking about moving on. Oh, and you seem to be frozen. Okay, well, once this wants to work, we are going to be talking about ideas to implement relational leadership. And like I said, none of this is groundbreaking, but just as maybe a reminder to folks, a refresher, or maybe there's going to be like, something that you haven't thought about before. So number one, it comes down to, first and foremost, getting to know your people. So establishing individual timeframes to meet with each of your folks and understand their personal goals and career goals, asking them about themselves and how they're currently feeling in the workplace and outside of work, and showing that you care about your employees, not just their work. And doing so can really help to motivate folks. So again, establishing that relationship, that's what relational leadership is all about, right? Empowering your employees. So finding out what their goals and dreams are and help them to achieve it, providing them opportunities that will help towards their goals, and ask for their input, advice on certain decisions, and offer stretch assignments to help with their personal and professional growth and development. Number three, and this is what I said, some of these are easier than others. This one I definitely still struggle with, but think of yourself as someone with influence. Building confidence in who you are as a leader. It's funny. Sometimes I talk to folks and they're like, oh, I really admire your leadership style, or, oh, I'm on calls. We have so many great leaders here. And to me, I'm like, oh, me? Really? You see me as the leader? And so sometimes I still have imposter syndrome around that. So, and so again, this is much as a reminder for me as it is to everyone else, but we all do have influence, whether we recognize it or not. So, building confidence in who we are and in our leadership style. And then when you build that confidence and that you have that influence, then you can really bring folks along with the vision you see, the change you want to see in the world. And then that's when things get really good and juicy, when you all share that common vision, you're all working towards that. But at first it starts with, seeing yourself as someone with influence and building your confidence as a leader. Number four, being authentic and truthful. So being your true and authentic self. And when you are this way, this resonates with folks, right? When you are who you are, if you don't hide behind a professional veneer, which, so many have taught us to be and how to be at work. And when you can be your true and authentic self, it also invites and encourages others to do the same. Also, being honest and real about hardships and struggles. I was at a retreat a while ago with really influential and inspiring Indigenous women in business and business leaders. And some of them who, professionally or, their business are really successful, they shared, it's hard, and they were just really transparent about the struggle. And everyone shared, like some of the more influential folks, we all agreed, by you sharing your struggles, it just makes it real and allows us to relax and realize, oh, okay, so if you're struggling, then that gives us permission to struggle too. And we don't have to pretend that we have it all figured out and everything's perfect, because that doesn't exist. That perfect is an illusion. What we see on social media is an illusion, right? So just being honest about hardships and struggles actually really resonates with folks and really builds that trust. And being transparent also helps to eliminate power imbalances, right? Withholding information creates that sense of mistrust. So being transparent as possible, you know, within reason and what you're allowed to do, really, again, helps to build that trust and build relationships in your team. Number 5, showing appreciation. It can just be a verbal appreciation. So many times we're thinking it, we're like, oh, I really appreciate so-and-so, or so-and-so is great at this. But often we don't actually just express it. We don't say it. So making the implicit explicit, just saying thank you, showing your gratitude here to your folks. Something as simple as that can go a long way. And then also there's other benefits of showing appreciation, like team lunches, social gatherings, and whatnot. So doing that goes a long way. And then lastly, rinse and repeat. You know, this is just a constant practice that we have to keep doing over and over again until it's just built into your leadership repertoire, and your team and your people know that this is who you are and how you are in the world. So with that said, we were going to do breakout rooms again, but I would just love for us to talk about, you know, having all this information's really important, and, you know, talking about this, but what's even more important is taking action. So I would just love, you know, in a big group, what are some things folks are committed to doing in 2023 to become a more relational leader? New year, new start. You know, it's a great way to think about, okay, how do I want to be intentional this year in 2023? How do I want to shift things? What changes do I want to make? Or maybe you're happy. Maybe you're like, yeah, I'm on the right track here, and I'm committed to keep doing whatever. So I would love to hear from folks in the group. What's something that you're committed to doing this year to become a more relational leader?
Just to clarify, you want people to just raise your hand and speak and not add in the chat, right?
Yeah. We'll share verbally. And Heather, I saw you went off mute.
Yes, yeah. You know what, I think what I want to do in 2023 is continue to create safe spaces to allow people to be vulnerable and to, you know, and just for people to be authentic. And I think that's something I want to do, is you creating safe spaces and trusting circles. Like we talked about circle work in our group. Love, that's what I lean on, and continuing to do that in my practice in 2023.
Beautiful. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, sharing circles are so powerful, hey? And such a great opportunity to be heard and seen. That's a great approach.
And Tammy had some great questions that I'm going to be taking back to my teams and just being curious around those questions. So that was so neat. And thank you for that learning, Tammy.
I'm curious, what were the questions? I didn't see that or hear them.
I will, Tammy could share them. That would be great.
Tammy, do you care to share? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we were talking about appreciation circles and storytelling circles, story sharing circles, appreciation circles. And one thing I most appreciated about one of my leaders was when he would pull all of the leaders together, 60 plus, and we would sit in a large circle, and the entire day, half day or full day, would be 3 rounds. The first round is, what do we most appreciate about being a member of, contributing to the agency that we were with, the organization. We'd hear all voices. And the second one was, what did we most appreciate about the team that we were in and supporting? And thirdly was, what were we most appreciative about how we were contributing and showing up and who we were becoming as part of this team and this organization. And it was 3 rounds and very powerful.
And great questions too. And they don't have to be like earth-shattering questions, but yeah, and you can get so much richness out of these questions. Yeah. Thank you, Tammy. That's a huge circle, 60 folks in circle. Yeah, no wonder you need all day.
It was the whole day. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
each circle takes almost an hour and a half when they're that large. Yeah.
Thanks, Tammy. What else? What are other things folks are thinking about or committed to do this year? It's great to share in a big group because you might get, pick up ideas from other folks. Okay, so what we'll do is, since folks are feeling a little quiet, that's totally okay. That could, some folks are more introverted. So what I have here is I created a Mentimeter. So in order to ensure, everyone has a chance to share and contribute, and because I would really, really love to see what folks are thinking about doing, or shifts they want to take. And so we're going to do a Mentimeter. And then Megan and Jen, I'm happy to share the results with you if you want to share it out afterwards somehow. It's anonymous, so your name's not going to be associated with it. I would just love to know, as a collective, as alumni, what are Royal Roads alumni willing to do and committed to do this year to step into your relational leadership and really create a world that we want to see that has meaningful and significant change. So I'm going to get the link, copy the link, and I'm going to plug it in Zoom. And the question you're going to be asked is, in 2023, something I will do to become a more relational in my leadership, ... and then fill in the blank. So, and we will see what people have to say. I will share the results as they come in. We'll see them real time. So share my results and we'll see what folks have to say. I'm going to share it now so we can see results real time as they're coming in. I'm loving these already. We're going to listen more, bring my authentic self every day. Acknowledge at least one team member per day. Up the gratitude factor. Love it. Slow things down. Huge. Find better balance in my work and my personal life. Do the roundtable and ask my team what they like best about being part of this team. As Heather said, building a space for cultivating relational leadership. Create more safe spaces to allow team members to be vulnerable, to support trusting workspaces. Bring mindfulness into my day. Expanding my practice of appreciation. Focus on leading myself first more often. Leaning into silence. That's a good one. Especially giving time for those introverts, right? To think and process. Listening to people better. Get proper sleep so they have focus and energy to engage. Self-care is so important as a relational leader, right? We need to make sure we take care of ourselves so we can also take care of our people. I've committed to using my RRU degree by teaching about leadership within my workplace, as well as using my voice within General Faculties Council to bring an Indigenous perspective to the discussion. Beautiful. I'll practice to increase my engagement with the circle of people I'm working with, team building activities. This is amazing. Thank you everyone for sharing. This is such beautiful learning and inspiration. And this is why I'll share with Megan and Jen, because I think others will be able to get inspiration from this too. And I will leave it to them how or if they want to use these results. But yeah, this is great. I'm mindful of the time, so I'm going to start to bring our circle to a close, and to end in a good way. I would just love to hear from folks using the Zoom chat, just to share. We're going to do a simple closing, but just share 2 words that best reflect you right now in this moment. There's no right or wrong. And sometimes we can be feeling opposite or opposing things at the same time. So if folks just want to share 2 words that best reflect you in this moment, and we will close our circle in that way. And I would, Judith says grateful and grateful, and I was actually going to say grateful myself. So I'm grateful to have spent this time with you, and inspired by people's sharing and what you shared in the Mentimeter, and knowing that all of you are here. I sense all of you are committed to being the best leader you can be, and driving meaningful change. So I'm always inspired to be in circle with like-minded folks. So Judith says grateful and grateful. Tori, humble, grateful. Arfin, tired, inspired, motivated and focused. Curtis, change, thankful. Joanna, comforted to share this experience with the others that had similar beliefs. Validated and thankful, revived, thankful, grateful and inspired too. Thankful and inspired, reflectful and grateful. Lots of gratitude. Love this. Grateful, anchored. Someone else said rejuvenated and grounded, encouraged and belonging, and inspired and encouraged. Beautiful. Again, I want to thank everyone for sharing the last 90 minutes together. Your time is precious and valuable, so I'm really grateful for it. And I'm also grateful for Royal Roads for inviting me in for this alumni chat. And with that said, I will pass it over to Megan.
Thank you, Vanessa. Honestly, I think Jen and I both commented together because mine was revived, and I really feel revived from the information you've given and the comments that have been shared. Truthfully, listening to what your experiences were when I jumped around in some of the rooms were so inspiring, and I really am going to take a lot out of this session personally. We want to thank you, Vanessa, for your willingness to give back in this unique way to Royal Roads and to your fellow alumni family here today. We also want to let you know that we're looking to you, our alumni, to build these sessions out and to really create meaningful engagement for one another on the areas of expertise that you're diving into. So reach out to us and let us know if you've got something up your sleeve that you'd like to share. Often we find these when we bump into you in person. We've had the opportunity to travel across Canada, some of our team members, and joining us late to the session because of a meeting. But I just want to acknowledge Rebecca Sharma is joining us, and her camera's on there if you just leave the wave. Rebecca is our new Director of Alumni Relations and Advancement. And so along with our team, Rebecca's traveled across Canada to find out what alumni like yourselves, what's meaningful in engagement and really what you're looking for. So you'll be seeing and hearing more from us as we distill that information and look to getting back to you on an engagement strategy in the future. But to close this session, Vanessa, I think what I'm going to take away most is you've created space for us to kind of think differently about leadership. And I really appreciate that by saying my notes were rooted in relationships, people first, being heard, seen, and respected. And I can honestly say in my career, there's been moments where that's just been so profound. And right now we're in a team where we're working for someone who is committed to that kind of leadership style. Rebecca's a new graduate of our leadership program, and I couldn't be more excited to work with you, Rebecca, because that is her style. And I'm not saying that inauthentically. I can honestly tell you that I wish more of our graduates could come back and work at Royal Roads, as well as go to other organizations to make these shifts, because it is a gift, as Judith, I think it was Judith said in your team, it's a gift that keeps on giving. When you truly do magnify your calling as a leader, you empower others to be able to magnify theirs. And then you can together, you can grow to thrive and create areas of your own within your own circle of influence where you can create space for people to live in a spirit of continuous improvement. Going back to that question of how do you discipline when you're trying to be a relational leader? Well, that comes down to building that space and creating space where people feel safe enough to fall and safe enough to be able to get up again and pick themselves up and keep going. And I'm so grateful that you've shone the light on that. The other piece, Vanessa, that you left me really wanting to research more is that connection to the Indigenous ways of knowing and being, and how profound that connection is in business operations. So I hope that you'll also let us kind of look at some of your research when you were a student here, because I think that's something that more organizations need to get to. So please feel free to unmute and share your thanks. But thank you, Vanessa, for taking the time. And thank you to each of you for taking the time from your day to commit to your own leadership style. And we're all leaders in different ways. It's your circle of influence, whatever that might be. This is what you're going to take out today, is how are you going to recreate that circle? And I'm so grateful for that. So thank you again. That takes us to the top of the hour, and we will be reaching out for your feedback, but also sharing what's coming down the road for more alumni chats in the future. Thank you again all, and have a wonderful day. Feel free to unmute. Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Bye.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Vanessa.